In March of 2019, a short notice appeared about files uploaded more than 3 years earlier. The website was Myspace. The missing files came to more than 50 million songs by 14 million artists, and the last line of the notice read, "We apologize for the inconvenience." Chris DeWolf helped start Myspace in 2003, in his late 30s, and ran it as chief executive until 2009. In February of 2005, he turned down the chance to buy Facebook for $75 million. The site was built in 10 days. Everything that was lost in 2019 had been uploaded onto software, written in a week and a half. Myspace started inside a company called eUniverse in August of 2003. Several employees there had Friendster accounts, and they decided to copy the features that were working. 10 days later, the first version was ready, written in Cold Fusion. Brad Greenspan, the founder and chief executive of eUniverse, ran the project. The team under him was small. Chris DeWolf took the chief executive job. Tom Anderson became president. Josh Berman and a group of programmers filled out the rest. The thing people remember is the page. A user could change the background and the look and the feel of a profile, which is why no two of them matched. Friendster had more than 10 times the developers and could not keep up with how fast Myspace changed. There was a legal problem before the money arrived. In April of 2005, the New York Attorney General, Eliot Spitzer, accused Intermix Media, the company that owned Myspace, of deceptive business practices involving spyware. The complaint said the spyware delivered pop-up advertisements and pushed users to its own search engine. It paid $7.9 million to settle and admitted no wrongdoing. 3 months after that settlement, News Corporation bought the company. The business, run by Rupert Murdoch, paid $580 million. Myspace was the 5th most viewed internet domain in the United States. It had 16 million monthly users and was still climbing. In January of 2006, the site was signing up 200,000 new users a day. A year later, it was signing up 320,000 a day. Think about what you had on your own page. You picked the background yourself, and you changed how the whole thing looked. And no profile had to look like any other one. Behind that page sat more than 4,500 web servers. Add to that more than 1,200 cache servers and more than 500 database servers. At the peak, the site was pushing 100 gigabits of data out to the internet every second. That figure and the server counts come from the chief systems architect of the company, speaking at a conference in London in 2008. The money curve is the part that matters. Monthly revenue went from $1 million to $30 million by October of 2006. In the 2008 financial year, the site brought in $800 million. In April of that year, it had 115 million monthly visitors. Half of that $30 million a month came out of one contract with Google. The contract paid only if traffic targets were met. If this is the kind of thing you want in your feed, the subscribe button is right there. One company a week, opened up with its own paperwork, and the paperwork is all this channel runs on. The people who saved what is left of the Myspace music library have never been identified. They have not turned up in this episode yet. eUniverse did not have to find an audience for the new site. It had 20 million of its own users and email subscribers, and it pointed them at Myspace. The site did not grow out of nothing. It grew out of the audience another company had already collected. The sale was signed on the 20th of July, 2005. Richard Rosenblatt, the chief executive of Intermix, negotiated it. Tom Anderson stayed on as president, and Chris DeWolf stayed on as chief executive. Both of them now reported into a company run by Rupert Murdoch. DeWolfie was not a 20-year-old in a dorm room. He had grown up in Portland, Oregon. He finished a degree at the University of Washington in 1988 and an MBA at the University of Southern California. in 1997. By the time MySpace launched, he was 6 years past that MBA. Late in 2005, MySpace stopped users from embedding YouTube videos in their profiles. Users had been able to do that since YouTube started earlier the same year. MySpace had its own video service and treated YouTube as a threat to it. Users protested in numbers. The ban came off shortly after. That is a company deciding what its own users were allowed to paste onto their own pages. In the year YouTube was founded. It lost that argument in weeks. 6 years after this, the whole company was sold again. On the 7th of August, 2006, Google and Fox signed an advertising contract. Google agreed to pay at least $900 million. In exchange, Google got the search box and the sponsored links on MySpace. The payment depended on MySpace hitting agreed traffic targets. Look at the size of that number against the price of the company. News Corporation had paid $580 million for the whole business a year earlier. The advertising contract was worth more than 55% more than that. It ran for 3 years. The exclusive part matters. For 3 years, the search results and the sponsored links from Google were the ones MySpace users saw. Half of the monthly revenue at the site arrived because of that arrangement. The other half came from a sales team selling display advertising on pages the contract had already filled. The Google chairman at the time said the internal numbers at his company all pointed at MySpace, and that Google needed to be where users and user-generated content were. The president of Fox Interactive Media, Ross Levinson, said 250,000 people were joining MySpace every day. He said the site was approaching 100 million profiles. That profile count arrived. The 100 millionth MySpace account was created on the 9th of August, 2006, in the Netherlands. From 2005 to 2009, this was the largest social networking site in the world. By the Comscore count, the average user was looking at more than 660 pages a month. That is the number an advertiser buys. Even the name kept changing. It started with a capital S in the middle of the word. Then the capital S went away. It is written in lowercase now, and for a while it was written as the word "my" followed by a long open box. A former MySpace executive later described what that contract did. The short-term cash was real. To earn it, the site had to put more advertising onto pages that were already full of advertising. The site got slower and harder to use and less flexible. The part that mattered most came next. MySpace could not experiment with its own site without giving up revenue. That is an anonymous account from inside the company, and it is worth saying so. While that was true, Facebook was rolling out a new and clean design. The people who put the most into MySpace were not employees. 14 million artists uploaded songs to it. Lily Allen and the Arctic Monkeys and Yahoo came out of that period, and the press had a name for them: the MySpace generation. For a band, the page was the distribution. A song went up, and strangers found it. The wall posts between users were part of how that worked, and the site deleted them later. In January of 2013, MySpace launched a redesign. It cleared out much of the text on the site, including the wall posts between users. In June of 2013, it deleted every previous blog. That deletion angered users and wiped out material that would have been useful history later on. Most bands had to rebuild their communities from nothing. That is the first deletion, 6 years before the one that made the news. The same company did the same kind of thing twice. The second time, it took the music. If you had a band page in 2013, you built your audience again by hand. The peak has a date and a percentage. In the week that ended on the 8th of July 2006, MySpace accounted for 4.46% of all internet visits in the United States. The count came from a traffic measurement firm called Hitwise. That put it past Yahoo Mail for the first time. It also put it ahead of the front pages of Yahoo and Google and MSN Hotmail. Yahoo disputed the comparison in the same article. Yahoo said the network was made up of many domains, and that comparing MySpace to one Yahoo email site was not accurate. By figures Yahoo supplied itself, its top 3 destinations together drew more than 10% of the American audience. In those same Yahoo figures, MySpace had 52 million unique visitors, or 30% of the people online. Yahoo put its own reach at 129 million American visitors, or 74% of the people online. On share of time spent, the same set of figures gave Yahoo 13% and MySpace 3.2%. Both of those numbers are in the same story from the same week. The first one is the one people repeat. The February 2005 meeting is worth stating precisely. DeWolf talked with Mark Zuckerberg about buying Facebook. Zuckerberg offered to sell it for $75 million. DeWolf said no, and 5 months later, MySpace itself sold for $580 million. In April of 2009, the executive team was replaced. Jonathan Miller, a former AOL executive, had arrived at News Corporation to run the digital media business 3 weeks earlier. Chris DeWolf was replaced as chief executive by Owen Van Natta, who had been chief operating officer at Facebook. Tom Anderson stepped down as president. 1 month later, Facebook passed MySpace in unique visitors in the United States. That was May of 2009. From there, the membership fell and kept falling. In June of 2009, MySpace cut 37.5% of its staff. 1,600 employees became 1,000. 30% of the American staff went in the same round. Consider what was on those servers by then. More than 50 million songs from 14 million artists, in the words of the newspaper that broke the story. Many of them had no other copy anywhere on the internet. That is not a figure of speech about sentiment, it is a statement about backups. The songs that went missing were the early ones. Lily Allen and the Arctic Monkeys and Yasir had put material on that site before anybody was paying for it. The newspaper that broke the story called the lost songs with no other home on the internet. The company confirmed to online archivists that the music was permanently lost. There was no backup to fall back on. That confirmation is the reason the story is not about a temporary outage. In January of 2011, the company announced it would cut 47% of its remaining staff. Market research figures released by Comscore around that time put the user count at 63 million, down from 95 million. In 2010, the chief executive Mike Jones said the site was no longer competing with Facebook as a general social network. The new plan was music and younger users. That is a smaller fight than the one they had been in. A BTIG analyst named Richard Greenfield put it in one sentence. Most investors have written off MySpace now. Two explanations sit next to each other in the record, and neither one is settled. An anonymous former executive blames the Google contract because the ad load it required made the site slow and unchangeable. Tim Vanderhook, who owns MySpace now, alleges that Google steered users away from MySpace and toward YouTube with its search algorithm. Those are two different accusations against the same contract partner. One is from inside the building and unnamed. The other is from the current owner, and it is an allegation, not a finding. Both are on the record, and the record does not choose between them. The reserve price was $100 million. Bidding closed on the 31st of May, 2011, without a single offer above it. On June the 29th, 2011, MySpace told its label partners and the press it had been sold. The buyer was Specific Media, with Justin Timberlake involved. and the price was not disclosed. CNN reported the figure as $35 million. That is the number everyone uses, and it comes from a news report, not from the company. The company that paid $580 million for it in 2005 had held it for 6 years. If you want one number for this story, take the head count. 1,600 people worked at Myspace in June of 2009. 150 worked there in 2018. The monthly visitor count went from 115 million in 2008 to 7 million in 2019. Nobody in that building in 2009 signed the Google contract in 2006. The bands who rebuilt their pages in 2013 did not choose the redesign either. Here are the prices in order. $580 million in July of 2005. A reserve of $100 million in May of 2011 with no bids. $35 million in June of 2011, according to CNN. Then it went up again on paper. $87 million to Time Incorporated on the 11th of February, 2016. Meredith bought Time on January the 31st, 2018. On the 4th of November, 2019, Myspace was sold on to Viant Technology. That last sale happened 8 months after the music was reported gone. The songs were already missing when the company changed hands again. What the site is now can be described exactly. Since the 5th of October, 2024, Myspace has been in read-only mode. Most of the images on it are broken. The songs that are still listed will not play. Music uploading and playback stopped working in early 2022. The loss itself had gone unnoticed for over a year before the March 2019 report. The first complaints from users unable to open older content came more than a year before that story broke. The explanation the company gave was a server migration project. The notice said files uploaded more than 3 years ago may no longer be available on or from Myspace. Then, it apologized for the inconvenience. The same notice carried the email address of the data protection officer at the company, Jana Jench. 490,000 of those songs exist. They are on the Internet Archive, in a collection of 144 zip files, 1.3 terabytes in total. They were collected between 2008 and 2010 by an anonymous academic study. The record kept by the archive says the method is unknown. The collection has a name. It is called the Myspace Dragon Hoard. It went up on the 1st of April, 2019, 2 weeks after the loss was reported. Read the description the archive wrote of what happened, because it is not a news article. It says nearly every file in the collection is no longer hosted at Myspace. Due to a suspicious and low-key deletion or loss of data in 2018. That is a library writing suspicious into its own catalog. Nobody has said who the researchers were. Nobody has said what they were studying. The biggest surviving batch anybody has found of the Myspace music library was saved by an academic study that ran 10 years earlier. Go back to the notice. Andy Baio, who helped start Kickstarter, worked out the scale of what was gone and published the numbers. He wrote that flagrant incompetence may be bad public relations. It still sounds better, he wrote, than saying the company could not be bothered with the effort and the cost of moving and hosting 50 million old audio files. That is an accusation, and it should be labeled as one. He did not prove that the deletion was deliberate. The company has never said anything beyond the server migration and the apology. 50 million songs left the internet, and the whole official record of it is one line about a server migration and one line about inconvenience. If you had a Myspace profile, say so below. If you ever uploaded a song to it, tell us what the song was. If you were in a band that built its first audience on that site, tell us the years. And if you have gone looking for something of yours and found it gone, put the title in the comments. Next week, a machine that was the fastest thing on Earth, built by 34 people in a building nobody was allowed to walk into.